Welcome, Lee here from Play Guitar Academy, and this week I'm showing you how to take easy blues bar chords and make them sound pro. And as always, as we learn the chords, I'm going to take the time to teach you why they work. But make sure you hang on to the end. I have a special offer for players who need to get better at embellishing chords. Okay, let's take a look at the chords. This week we're in the key of G, and we're going to be playing 12-bar blues. We'll be using the basic chords G7, C9, and D9, although we'll be adding some voicings and adding some other things too. Let's take a look at part 1. This is the first two measures of our 12-bar blues. And for both of these measures, we're playing a G dominant 7th chord, G7. The one we're going to start off with is the basic one, the one everyone knows, the one that looks like an E7 in open position, but it's just up here at the 3rd fret. Then we're going to play part of that chord, just the top 3 strings. Right after that, things get a little bit more interesting. So we're going to take this triangle shape, the same one that you would see on a regular D7 chord. We're going to move it over to the D, G, and B strings and slide it up to the 4th and 5th fret. So we have a 5, 4, 5 on the D, G, and B string. And then we're going to move that down to the 3, 2, 3 on the same string. So you can slide up and down if you like. You've probably heard that sound before. It's a very common sound, and it's very interesting why it works. We have a G note, a B note, and then an E note. Let's say G dominant 7, we have G, B, D, and F. Those are our 4 notes that we can use. This has the G and the B, so we have the root and the 3rd, but we have an E here. This is the major 6th, and this is a sound that you'll hear in a dominant 7th of what's called a 13th chord. It's an extension for the dominant 7th chord. We're putting the E over top of all of those notes. But this chord fragment just has the root, the major 3rd, and then the major 6th. So it's implying a 13th chord. And then when it slides back here, let's take a look at these notes. We have an F. There's our flat 7th for a G7 chord. Then we have an A. That's the 9th. That's important. And then we have the D note here. So that's our 5th. So between these two chords, we're getting all the notes for our G dominant 7 plus 2 extensions. We're getting a 13 when we're up here at the 4th and 5th fret, and then we're getting our 9th as we go back here at the 2nd and 3rd fret. So in measure 2, we're going to play our G7 chord again and play the top fragment of that chord in the beginning. Boom, bop. But now the next 2 chords we have up here at the 5th fret. We have another triangle shape just like this. And this is implying an F sharp 7th chord. Now we're in the key of G, F sharp, that shouldn't work. That's a half step out of the way, but you feel the tension that it brings into where we go to notes from a G7th chord. For the G7th chord up here, we've got our D, that's the 5th. We have our F, which is the flat 7th, and we have our B, which is the major 3rd. Just no G in there. We don't have the root. That's okay. The bass player in the backing track is playing it anyway. So we're just taking 3 notes of the chord, outlining the harmony. So the chord that was behind that, these are the notes from an F sharp 7th chord without the F sharp in it as well. Same chord, just a half step displaced. That's the important thing. We're starting from a half step away and sliding into the right note. Tension and release. Okay, let's take a look at part 2 now. This is measures 3 and 4 of our 12-bar blues. There's a lot of playing going on this. We have some triplets being played. And if you take a look at the chord, we have a G9 chord. That's a G dominant 7th with 1 extra color note added to it, the 9th. That's the A for this chord. And what we're playing is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And then at the very end, we add this 12th fret to the top of the chord. We'll talk about that in a second. So this is our G9. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. Notice above these chords, we have a crescendo marking. So we start low and we increase the volume as we go through that whole measure, with the last one being the loudest. here. So we start quiet. 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. Now this very last chord here, the one that has 10 on the A, 9 on the D, 10 on G, 10 on B, but 12 on the high E string, this is a G13. We've added this E note. Remember the E note from the 13 from before? We're adding an E note to a G dominant 7th chord. So this will have the 9th and the 13th in it. Very cool sounding chord. All you have to do is add one finger. So say you're playing a chord up high. You can add this 13th note to your 9th chord and add a little interest without changing the way that the chord functions. Still functions exactly the same. These notes that we're adding and taking away are more color tones than anything. They're not the functional notes. Now, as we get into measure 4, we have the same chord, but the rhythm has changed. Instead of triplets, we're having 8th notes. Ba, ba, ba. And so we're going to play G9 twice. Now we go back a fret to F sharp 9 again. You notice this theme going through the 12-bar blues. We're taking a chord out by half step and then bringing it back in. It's a great way to add tension without doing too much to the song. So we do 2 with the G9, 2 with the F sharp 9, back to the G9. This is a quarter note, so it lasts a little bit longer. And then we slide down here to the 3rd fret. So we have 4th fret, 3rd fret, and then we bar across the 4th fret there. That's a C sharp 9th chord. Now this is important. This is a half step away. This theme of playing chords a half step away from where they need to end up to add tension. This is setting up our next lick here. So C sharp 9, where do you think it's going to go next? So in part 3, we're going to change up the voicings a little bit of the chords. The chord we ended off when we last met, we have the C sharp 9. It's wanting to go down. I hope your ear can hear that. It wants to resolve down to the 4 chord that's coming in. This is our C9. It's a C dominant 7th with a 9th added in. So in C, the 9th is a D. So we have a D note. It's on the B string right there. That's what makes it different than a C7 chord. We play that as a chord note. And then right on to, we play it again, but it's a quick one. And then we're going to go up to all 5s across the G, B, and high E string. So we play this here, all 5s here. This is very similar to what we did over the G7 chord. Well, we had a little interest adding some cool notes in. So up here, the notes we have are C, E, and A. Now over a C dominant 7th chord, that A, that's the tricky note right there. That is our major 6th. That 6th note, when you play it over top of a dominant 7th chord, that's the 13th. Just like when we played the G7 chord, adding that cool note in. So we slid up to this. You can slide if you want to add the note in. And when we come back, there is the 9th, that D right there. So we're doing essentially the same thing, sliding up to the 13th chord, voicing, and then back to the 9th. Very fun thing to do. If you've got a lot of time in a chord, this creates movement, it creates interest, and it doesn't change the function of the chord. Next, now we're going to start changing voicings around a little bit. So check this out. We're up at the 5th fret. We're going to bar straight across kind of like a C bar chord. But our top string, we're going to put the 6th fret. That's a B flat. So we have G, C, E, and B flat. Those are all the notes that you need for a C dominant 7th chord, not a 9th, a 7th chord. But notice we don't have a root note here. Our G is in the bass. So we can call this a C7 over G or slash G. Now we play that twice. And we're going to do again what we've been doing in the other sections. We're going to take it half step out and back. Add a little tension, add a little interest. So let's take a look. We're going to play it once, twice, out, and then slide it back in again. Okay, in part 4, we have some really cool chords here, a new voicing. So we're going to be putting our first finger on the 6th fret on the B string, and then second finger on the 7th fret on the G string, and then our third finger tucked underneath on the high E string at the 7th fret. There's our familiar triangle shape here, but this now is on the top 3 string. This should remind you of an open position D7th chord right here. This is something that you will hear in a lot of Eric Clapton, Buddy Guy, those style songs, to give an older sound to your blues chords. It's not that ninth and kind of a little bit more slick sound. This is a little bit more raw sound. Now what this is a G dominant 7th chord without the G, just like we had before in one of our other ones. The G note is being played. We don't need to have that note in here to outline the harmony of this chord change, going back to the 1 chord here. So we start that off on beat 1. And now we're going to go back to a fragment of this first chord that we played. So we're going to have the 3rd fret on the D string. That's an F. Then we have the 4th fret on the G string. That's our B. And then the 3rd fret on the B string. That's our D note. So a fragment of our G7th chord, but we're going to go above that to a barred 5th fret. That gives us notes from our 4 chord, a C. So we have a G, a C, and an E. So it gives kind of the impression of a 1 chord going to a 4 chord quickly and coming back to a 1 chord. This is another way to embellish this G dominant 7th chord, to take up some time to fill the spaces with interesting things without really changing the functionality too much. You hear that in a lot of different songs. It's a very cool thing to try. So it's G dominant 7 to C major, try it. And then back to G dominant 7. Now we're going to get over to a lower fragment of our first chord, the low 4 strings, and do that again. So all together. And doing that twice really starts to get your ear wanting something new to happen. We're setting up the next chord. Here we go. Okay, let's take a look at part number 5. In this, we've made it to our 5 chord. This chord we haven't had yet in our 12-bar blues. This is the D7th chord. So first thing we're going to do is put your first finger on the D note. That's the 3rd fret of the B string. And then you're going to put your second finger, skip a string, and put it on the D string at the 4th fret. And then your 3rd finger on the A string at the 5th fret. So it looks kind of like a C chord at this point. But what we're going to do is tuck our pinky underneath and put that on the G string at the 5th fret. Not playing the outside strings, just the inside 4 string. So what this gives you is a very tight sounding dominant 7th chord. So we have as our root, our major 3rd, our flat 7th, and then our 5th on the top there. It's a very cool sound. Born on the Bayou by CCR uses this same chord voicing. I think they do it as a C chord though, but it's the same chord voicing. It's very cool if you've had a lot of 9th chords, 13th chords, to have just this kind of revoicing of just a plain old D7 sometimes can sound really nice. And as we go through here at the end of the 2nd beat, we're going to bring that down a half step and then bring it back up just like we did in all the other ones here. So adding interest by taking the chords a half step out and bringing them back in. Okay, let's take a look at measure 10. Measure 10, we've got our C dominant 7th chord, the same voicing that we used before, but we're only using the top 3 strings. This is with the flat 7th on the top. That's important. So as we go through this, that B flat's going to move to an A. So now we're barring just the 5th fret straight across. That goes from C to E to B flat, which is the dominant 7th feel, to a C to E to A, which is that's like that. Remember the 13th to the 9th sound that we're using. In fact, we're doing both of those here. To our 13th sound, to our 9th sound. These are the chords that were based off of our C9 when we added a little interest in there. Now we're doing it in a different way, walking down. Pretty cool. We'll go back up to the 5th fret barred and then back to our fragment of our regular old G dominant 7th chord. Let's take a look at part number 6. We're going to finish up this 12-bar blues here. We ended our last section with our 1 chord, a fragment of our G7. It came in a little bit early, and it's playing into this measure as we start. Now our next chord here is 2nd fret on the E string, 1st finger, 3rd fret on the A string, 2nd finger, and then 3rd fret on the G string with our 3rd finger tucked underneath. That's the bottom of our C9 chord. That's just a little fragment of our C dominant 7th chord. So this is as if we're going 1 chord to the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord. That's the next one. But here is the most important part. Take a listen to this. Cool stuff. This is very different. You hear this as a lot of the beginning chords of older bluesy songs. I'm sure you've heard that before, and it goes in. This is an augmented chord. This has got a D, an F sharp, and an A sharp. We have taken the 5th degree of the scale, D, F sharp, A, and we have raised that 1. If you think about it, if you have a D, an F sharp, and an A, and you raise the 5th, the A, 1 to A sharp, the outside notes get wider apart. Augmented, right? We're making this a wider sound. Has kind of a floating kind of sound. I wouldn't use it throughout the rest of the 12-bar blues, but here at the end, it's a great sound for the end of the turnaround to let you know that we're going back to 1. You'll hear it all the time. And once you've played it here, then you hear it in a song, you can't miss it. Thanks for playing along today, and thanks to all of our Academy members over at PlayGuitarAcademy.com who are tearing into the tab and guitar profiles from this lesson right now. Also, for the players whose chords sound dull and lifeless, I have a mini course just for you. It's my Chord Elevation Toolkit, and it teaches you how to make your simple, basic chords shine with embellishments and double stops. There's a really good deal going on right now, and you can learn more about that from the link in the description. And as always, let me know what you think in the comments. Have a great practice, and I will see you in the next video.